Greetings, programs, and welcome to a new episode of the Awesome Friday podcast. The only podcast where we review two things every week, except this week we're going to talk about three. My name is Matthew, and with me as always is Simon. Say hello, Simon.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Yes, we're going to do the same thing we always do, apart from the fact it will be different.
Yes.
Because...
Now, we're going to do the same thing with 50% more thing.
This is usually where I ask you what you've been watching, but I actually just want to intercept that and tell you that when my wife was putting the kids down last night, I put on The Worst Person in the World to watch meant to be the first 10-15 minutes. And I watched 3/4 of that movie, and my wife actually came and watched the rest of it. And that's quite a good film, isn't it?
Yeah, that is legitimately one of the best films of last year.
It's quite special. So we got to midnight, and then the dog decided he had to go out, and we have half an hour left. So we've saved the last half an hour. But it turns out everyone is like going crazy over this movie for pretty good reason, and the main actress won the Palme d'Or acting award, and for very, very good reason. She's absolutely exceptional.
Yeah, I'm apologies to her. I don't 100% know how to pronounce her name. I believe it's Renata Rensiv. Is legitimately wonderful, and I can't wait to see her in more things.
Lots of like Dakota Johnson energy, like that kind of really reminded me of her performance in the thing we talked about with Dakota Johnson and
Cha-Cha Real Smooth.
Cha-Cha Real Smooth, like that kind of energy, that kind of look. Very, very good, I thought.
Yeah.
So what are you watching?
On a similar note, I watched the new horror movie Smile last night.
Oh, I really want to see that.
Which has some real... It's like... basically, if you took It Follows and The Ring and crossed them together, that would be a pretty good explanation of what this movie is.
What?
It's no Barbarian, don't get me wrong. But I think it leans a little too hard on the jump scares at some points.
I hate jump scares.
But the jump scare, most of the jump scares are really well executed, like really earned, and the rest of it is really creepy. And there's some really interesting and wonderful camera work that, like, a lot of it is just really off-putting in a way that I really enjoyed.
Well, It Follows is one of my top horror movies of all time, and I love The Ring, both the original Ring and the remakes. So I will be checking Smile out for sure.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you can imagine It Follows, but make it for trauma instead of STDs, then that's pretty much what we're talking about.
Okay. But I was going to say I like the STDs, but I don't want that to be misconstrued. I look forward to that.
Well, good. Anything else new this week before we dive right in? Because we're on a timer today.
We've all got busy lives. I don't think so. I've watched just more Lower Decks and more bits and bobs this week. And football's on, and Qatar is a terrible place. So I think that pretty much sums up my week. My wife's been away for most of the week, so I've just been doing like parent stuff and kid stuff. So
it's true that FIFA is a demonstrably evil and corrupt organization, and Qatar is a demonstrably terrible place. But football is a wonderful sport, and I feel very conflicted about all of it. Yeah. But Team Canada is playing for the first time since I was a literal child, so I am watching.
I hope they've got more. I mean, we're not going to turn into a football podcast, but they were so impressive in the last game, but they don't have anyone who can finish their balls as they push forward, if you pardon the expression. So they're playing at 8:00 tomorrow, right? Our time. So I really, really hope that they've just been focusing on their like forward striking play, because they absolutely did not deserve to lose. They were fantastic in their like belief in the middle of the field. A little bit sloppy defense, but they had no one who could finish at the front.
Yeah, I think tomorrow's middle game, I believe. Yeah, the 8:00 our time.
Yeah,
4:00 p.m. Qatar time. And yeah, I think a good way to sum it up would be that when playing Belgium, arguably odds-on favorite, or at very least they have the best defense
Yeah,
and goalkeeper
yeah,
in
yeah.
the tournament. But I think a good way to put it would be they were far more athletic than Belgium, but far a little bit less technically adept. Would be the very polite way to put it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Belgium have the experience, but they're all like quite an old team now, and it showed. They didn't have the legs, if you want the parlance. But the when it came to like that professional finish, that Belgium were just all over them, which is a real shame because Canada had such great passing moves in the middle of the field. I was so impressed with what they pulled together.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I wonder if maybe the rest of the matches that Canada ends up playing, which will be at least two because it's group
Mm-hmm.
stage, I kind of wonder if maybe they might be a little more difficult because no one was quite expecting what happened the other
Yes,
day.
yes,
Like we lost, but we lost really well. So
and for the love of God, practice penalty taking. For
yeah, that
God's
was
sake. Oh,
heartbreaker, real heartbreaker.
terrible, terrible penalty. But I would love for them, even if they don't make it through the group stage, like I would love for Canada to get their first ever World Cup goal because they really deserve to have that on their sheet.
Yep, I'd love
But
them to have a goal and a win, but even just a
yeah,
goal would
yeah,
be an
just a
improvement
goal
at
would be
this
great.
point.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
now that we've
Uh,
finished talking about football, and
Football. Look at you. Look at you talking about
spoiler,
football like a local.
so spoiler alert, we'll probably be talking about football a lot over the next couple of weeks, and we'll probably be mentioning that FIFA is a terrible organization over the next couple of weeks. So
True story.
get on that train, people.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's move on. We got a hard out today, so let's start with our first thing. We're going to revisit something we covered a few weeks ago. Now that it is over, we are going to talk a little bit about the Star Wars television series Andor, which is fucking incredibly good. I can't even let Simon talk about it, and he's going to go on for ages about how good it is, but it is so good. With wonderful cast. It feels like the first Star Wars thing in
Ever?
at least since The Last Jedi. It feels like the first Star Wars thing to feel like it had something to say and a story to tell before being Star Wars. If you know what I'm trying to say, like
Yeah.
it's the first thing that seems to be unconcerned with actually, like, it's kind of a hard comparison because The Last Jedi is actually very much about Star Wars, but it is also like has something to say that is more important than that, or anyway. But Andor feels like something where it's like, well, I wrote this great revolutionary spy story, and let's just put it in Star Wars, which is exactly what I want from Star Wars.
Yeah.
So,
I know.
it's the
I,
first one that makes the world feel, the universe feel bigger in forever, and I just loved it. I loved it so much.
I mean, where to start with this? We don't usually revisit things, do we? But when we last talked about Andor, we were a couple of episodes in, and we were effusive over how amazing it was, but also very cautious because we've been here before. We've been stung so many times by Star Wars trying desperately to be reverential, and to involve as much of its lore as possible. And I can't believe, and I said this to you every single week I watched it. I can't believe that week on week we got an episode that was one of the best written things I've seen in decades. Like Tony Gilroy, I haven't watched that movie that he did that you rewatched, the George Clooney one.
Yeah, Michael Clayton, which is a
Michael Clayton.
legitimate masterpiece. Yeah.
So I need to watch that because his writing, I mean, as someone who likes to, as someone who likes to write and it has been studying writing for a long time and is still trying to get good at it and is still very frustrated at how bad I am at writing sometimes. Just the writing was like when the notes hit just right. It
Mm-hmm.
somehow the whole thing managed to do everything and still be part of Star Wars and still be this gray area spy story without falling into any of the traps or any of the cliches. And you end up with this 12 episode run, which is one of the best seasons of TV I've ever seen in any genre. And yet it's still somehow recognizably Star Wars. It's not like grafted onto that universe. It's still part of that universe. And it's the thing we've been saying for years and years and years. And you know how I feel about Rogue One. I would have Rogue One's babies if possible. I love that movie because it felt like it's the same feelings I feel about Andor, but finally lots of other people feel the same way too. Like Andor is an expansion of what Rogue One did, which is the non-Jedi, the gray area, boots on the ground, self-sacrifice, everything that Star Wars has always been about, which is about sacrifice for the greater good. You save what you love instead of killing what you hate. And the to see it unwrap and then have that 4-episode mini arc, the whole prison thing, and the audacity to end like the main character just saying that he could never escape, can't swim, like the absolute perfection. And I haven't even started talking about Stellan Skarsgård, Fiona Shaw, Genevieve O'Reilly, Diego Luna, Adria Arona, Denise Gow. Like everyone is like on stage on their final night after doing a full like rep theater with their monologues, and it's like one of the writers I love said every line could be a one-act play, and I just keep thinking about that. Everything is because good writing is restrained. It doesn't go too far. It lets you kind of feel what they're thinking without it being painted out. And this was just a masterclass in that. And Stellan Skarsgård's monologue in the penultimate episode, where someone asks him, like, "What have you sacrificed?" And he's like for the next 5 minutes, he starts talking, and he goes, and his intensity just builds and builds and builds, like unbelievable. And Fiona Shaw as well destroyed me in her episodes. I'm just like
Fiona Shaw made me cry.
Yeah,
effectively every time she was on screen.
that one episode where Cassian comes home. I'm sorry, this is spoilers, but you should damn well watch this. Cassian comes home and he can't stay for long, and he's begging her to leave, and that whole conversation where her intensity builds by like micrometers every time she speaks, until she is just like shouting but not shouting at him. Just to my core, shaken. Like amazing.
Yeah, that was the episode where and it's a line that got repeated a couple of times by her, but like that's the time when she's building because he's not really listening and to what she's saying and what she's going to do, and then he says like I would worry about you, and she says and she says, well, that's just love, there's nothing to be done about that. And I'm just like like just like.
So my wife's been away this week, and we're a very close family, and my kids were sad, and like and my daughter was like, I miss her, and I said, that's just love, nothing to be done about that. And she kind of, that helped her, and I was like, don't cry. We haven't even got into the fucking droid, Be Emo, which is the best named droid, most apt droid, who is basically played as a grieving child. And the best thing about the droid is that nobody speaks down to it. Everyone treats the droid like an actual living thing. And there's one terrible, wonderful scene where a main character gets like squats down to talk to him as if he's a child. And the whole thing is written with authenticity and truth. And there's a torture scene. Adriana Aragona has her own kind of 3 or 4 episode arc where she's being tortured, and she is just a perfect example of screaming by saying nothing. Like it's just mind blowing. When I watched a recap of all the best things from season 1 of Andor. And
you just rewatched season 1 of Andor?
I went through a slideshow, and honestly, I was like, God, this happens and this happens, and it somehow works and it fits together.
I'm just saying that a YouTube video of all the best things about Andor season 1 would just be a rewatch of Andor season 1.
Just that.
And I'm saying that as the Star Trek guy. So
for me, the high bar for sci-fi writing as a TV series has been The Expanse for years and years. I think The Expanse is something really special, and this was better than that. This was better than any episode of the series of The Expanse. Like as a complete season of TV that was not just this amazing spy story that had beautiful circular narrative from the very, very last second of this episode, just everything fits together, and it's still recognizably Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
and not just visually, which was a nice coda, but emotionally, and the design, and also the everyone's existing in that universe. It didn't feel like it's a planet like out of what's going on. It was part of the story, and you, having seen Rogue One and having seen the original trilogy, the seeds of it are here without it being reverential, without it being like winky to the audience or like stunt cameos. It's just like, how did this come out of the same studio as Boba Fett and Mandalorian? Like, how is that possible? Because it is utterly different in every regard.
I mean, I
It's
think the
incredible.
answer is Tony. I don't have any inside baseball, but I think
But
the answer is Tony Gilroy, and having something actual to say. You know,
I do love. I every time you don't know, you don't have inside knowledge. You said I don't have inside baseball. I'm sure that's a reference to something, but I love how you say that every time. It's probably a documentary or something, isn't it? But
I mean, it's just a phrase. It's just a phrase that people say.
I do like it,
Yeah.
but we don't have. But the I just even just quiet. It played with moments so well. Like there's a great moment where the rebels are kind of pretending to be shepherds and they're hiding out in the beautiful Scottish glens, and then they hear like um they get the Imperials are getting ready for this like this festival thing, and so they're doing fly. But this one Tie Fighter does a flyby, and you've heard the Tie Fighter sound like thousands of times in your life as part of a cacophonous like a space battle. But having one Tie Fighter screaming overhead, knowing that it could ruin everything, it was suddenly terrifying. Like the iconography of Star Wars was suddenly meaningful. Like there's many episodes where my stomach was just in the heist episode, my stomach was just doing flip flops all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And the Empire have never been dangerous. Stormtroopers have never been dangerous until like now. Like, and it's not just physically dangerous, but the things they do to suppress.
I
Just
mean,
oh
this is what like,
my god.
we have two new things to talk about as well, and like I
Oh,
don't have time to talk about everything, but a couple of things I wanted to talk about were that I think it's really interesting that this is I think the first Star Wars show where the sort of the battle of ideologies isn't really being fought by the protagonist, which I find super interesting because ultimately there's two like Cassian Andor does have an opposite, and it's the character of Cyril Karn, and they are both basically pawns, like one to various degrees of willingness in this ideological battle. But the actual ideological extremists, the people who are like the hardcore fighters for their causes, are still in Skarsgård as Luthen and Denise Goff as Deidre Miro, the Imperial Security Bureau person. And I find it really interesting that we're seeing the sort of like, you know, flag officer level and the boots on the ground level at the same time, but in a way where we're not. I don't know how to articulate exactly what I'm saying, but basically, I find it interesting that those are the dualities, and it's not Diego Luna, it's not Cassian Andor leading from the bottom, and it's not he's not having to convince anyone. He's having to be convinced. And on the Imperial side, it's really interesting that like Deidre Miro is a really, really good security officer. And mostly it's that she's just not terrible, you know, like she's just actually competent and everyone else around her is not.
motivated. Yeah.
And yeah, competent and motivated, and everyone else around her is sort of like, we're the Empire, darling. We're just going to do everything, and you're going to take it and like it. And she's like, no. I, you know, it's all very interesting to me, and I think that it's really interesting that, you know, on the rebel side, Cassian is so reluctant to join the cause, and on the Imperial, and but they want him and they need him, and on the Imperial side, Cyril is so like a puppy dog wanting to join the Imperial cause, and they're like, sorry, you're not quite bureaucratic enough for us. You know? Like,
Yeah.
and and just the fact that it really goes deep on the idea that the real terrifying thing of the Empire isn't Darth Vader or the Emperor. It's just the
Mm.
oppressive
Mm.
bureaucracy of it all, like the boring, mundane shit that
And
how they oppress people just by existing is very, very interesting and very well executed.
and on that note, Mon Mothra in amidst the middle of that bureaucracy, but playing both sides, and she has a wonderful moment in the last episode where she absolutely throws her terrible husband under the bus because it will cover her tracks more, and
Mm-hmm.
just that whole you could have a whole series of her weaving her way through her political life being one thing on the outside and another thing on the inside. And Genevieve O'Reilly, I have no idea where she came from before this, but she is just phenomenal in this, in that kind of barely contained emotion and control, and that sort of, not regality because she's not a monarchy, but that kind of the high status when it needs to be, the emotion when it needs to be. Just everyone is on their absolute A game, with the script that is the best that I've heard in years, with the direction of everything as well. I said this on the very, very first episode where Cassian's looking for his sister and he runs into the camera when the Imperial, no, they're not Imperial, the security guards run after him. And the camera holds his face during that whole dialogue scene. You don't see, they're out of focus in the background. You just see him reacting to it and thinking what to do. And I remember texting you straight away, like, what is going on? I've never seen this happen before. I've never seen direction like this in Star Wars. And it
Mm-hmm.
turns out the whole season was directed with such creativity and such flair. I'm like, where have these people been before? Like, give them Star Wars from now on. Like, I want to see. I'm so glad we didn't have Jedi mythology in this, but these people, if you gave them the, your mainline Star Wars movies that have to have a Jedi and have to have a Sith and all that stuff as well, I want to see them do something with that, because my God, I don't have superlatives left to talk. I could talk for the whole hour. I know we can't, but I could just talk for hours about how successful this season of television is. It's
Yeah,
just
and
mind blowing.
in terms of the production, I mean, I think a big part of it too is that it's clearly been organized. Like
Yes.
there's four major arcs, and each one of those arcs is written by and directed by one person. So, like the first three episodes, which are all about Andor looking for his sister and then having to escape Ferrix, that's all written by Tony Gilroy and directed by Toby Haynes. And then the next three episodes are all written by Dan Gilroy and directed by Susanna White, right up
Mm.
through the heist. And
Mm.
then the entire prison segment is, I think there's one episode that's not, like the one episode that's sort of like a middle place before he gets arrested is written by
Right.
Stephen Schiff and directed by Benjamin Caron. And then the entire three episodes stretch of being in prison was written by Beau Willimon and directed by Toby Haynes again. And that might be my favorite three episode stretch of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then we get Benjamin Caron and Tony Gilroy back for the last two. And I also think, just from a structural point of view, like we did talk a little bit about how the first couple episodes are a little bit slow. And that was, I think, a fairly universal criticism because originally we got four episodes and the first three are a little bit slow, but that pays off in the
Yeah.
last two back on Ferrix because you already know the lay of the land, like that world
Mhm.
building, that getting us familiar with the places and the people on Ferrix
Yeah.
make it so they can just tell the story at the end, and it's just wonderfully executed.
Do you know, on that note, it is, you're absolutely right. And when you think about the hero's journey, so the 7-stage hero's journey that is used in so many modern movies, including most of the Star Wars, where you've got the first act is the hero being confronted by the problem, and then at the beginning of the second act, they accept the quest. After declining the quest, they accept the quest. So Luke sees his burning aunt and uncle and says directly, "This is me accepting the quest." Like, that's the moment. And this whole season, 99.9% of this season is Cassian rejecting the quest. and
Hmm.
he doesn't begin his act 2 until the last seconds of the final episode, and I just found that fascinating. This exploration of his emotional, physical journey to get to that point. I've never seen something that effective. That's just the rejection of the quest before. Like, just mind
Yeah.
blowing.
And season 2 can't come soon enough. It's going to be interesting because the structure of season 2 is going to be a little bit different, but it still can't come soon enough. Have you heard about this? How season 2 is going to work? At
No,
all? So
no, I don't.
season 1 is roughly like the whole series starts at 5 years before Rogue One,
Yeah,
and season 1 takes place over the course of that first, like the fifth year out, basically. And
yeah.
season 2 is apparently going to be 4 blocks of 3 episodes each, and each one of those blocks will take place in a year closer to Rogue One. And the end of the last block will apparently be like a lead in to Rogue One.
You need to stop talking because I need
So
that. I need that right now.
so
I need
effectively
that.
Rogue One is going to be the Andor finale, just for the record.
Oh, oh my god!
Yeah. So can't come soon enough.
You guys. Oh my god!
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's
How far out is it? Do we have a timeline on it?
probably season 2, 2024. So
Okay.
year after next, unfortunately.
Okay. We need to stop talking about Andor because I'm just going to keep going. Unless you stop me, I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah, let's
I
stop
haven't even
there.
talked. I haven't even
Let's
talked about the Imperial guy. I don't know his name. Do you know the
Cyril.
actor?
I talked about Cyril.
No. Sorry, the Imperial. The not Cyril's not Imperial. He's
He is
security guard.
he is
Um,
at the end. He's in the bureaucracy at the
well,
end. He's the
yeah.
wannabe.
We haven't talked about Varada Setu, and we haven't talked about her relationship with Vel. It's so perfectly played as well. But I want to talk about the Imperial head, the head honcho.
Oh,
Um,
Anton Lesser, yeah, the head of the
uh,
ISB.
just like Peter Cushing levels of evil without being cliched,
Yeah, you
and
need to
just
watch.
brilliant.
We don't have time to talk about how great Anton Lesser is, but suffice to say, you need to watch Game of Thrones, my friend.
Oh, is he? He's in that as well, is he?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's also
All
in
right.
a Netflix series we recently started watching called 1899, which, yeah, good stuff.
Oh wow, they really aged him. He looks much younger in real life.
I don't think they did actually. I think that's just an old
Oh,
photo you're looking
it's an
at.
old photo. Oh,
Yeah,
time, you tell me. Okay.
yeah.
All right, we got to move on.
Anyway, we got to move
How
on.
many stars? How many
Andor's
stars?
great. All of them, just all of them.
Yeah.
How many? Yeah,
Like,
5 is the max,
oh
so
my
all of them.
god! Like, if it seems bad to give it 5 stars, but it is all of the stars. One of the best things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, good, awesome. Well, let's move
Okay.
on. Before we move on, I have a question. Of the two things we're going to cover next, one's longer and one's shorter. Which of those did you like better?
Oh, the one that is Marvel adjacent significantly more than the other one.
All right, so let's move on to the new Apple TV Plus streaming holiday movie, Spirited, which it sounds like Simon didn't like, and I thought was just fine.
Uh,
Why don't you take us through Spirited, Simon? Take us through the basics of the plot. You have 30 seconds. Go.
well, okay, it's Christmas Carol, transposed. It's modern day Christmas Carol. So if you've seen Scrooged or any other version of Christmas Carol, like I know Muppets Christmas Carol is actually that thing, but any kind of modern transposition of a terrible person, and you have 3 ghosts that come to visit you and show you your past, your present, your future, and slowly that terrible person who believes is irredeemable will become, in fact, redeemable.
Mm-hmm.
And
Pretty
everyone's
accurate.
happy
Yeah.
at the end. And this is a musical. Now there is a twist in this that I didn't know because I hadn't looked at the cast list, or maybe it was even said in marketing and I missed it. But one
It
of the
wasn't in the
characters turns
marketing at
out to be.
all.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
I don't
don't.
want to talk about that twist.
I wouldn't spoil it, but basically, yeah, there is
Okay.
there's a twist about who exactly one of the people is in the story,
Yes.
and I think it's a super interesting twist.
Yeah, me too. It was so good, and they didn't do enough with it at all. But it's a really good idea.
I don't know if they didn't do. I mean, it's kind of becomes the point of the back half of the movie, though. That like And I also like that it does take a little bit of liberty with the idea that like that people can change just overnight, even though he still kind of does. Um,
Hmm.
it's a tough one. I thought this movie was fine. I keep seeing people telling me that like online and saying that like oh it's so bad and like oh they can't sing and but like honestly have you guys watched Christmas movies? Have you watched a Muppet like honestly, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. It's true that if you're over Ryan Reynolds' shtick, which at this point is a very easy thing to be over, you probably won't like the parts in between where he's singing and dancing. And if you are that concerned with the quality of singers' voices, you might not enjoy the song and dance numbers. But also, Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell clearly put in the work to be the best they could at those two things. And it is a musical that is shot like a stage musical, and the choreography is great, and the whole thing is really well intentioned and good spirited. And I had a good time watching it, and I have been humming that Christmas morning feeling for like 4 days now. So yeah,
Hmm.
I'm
My
sensing an
reaction
incoming
was,
disagreement.
well, the problem is that I don't know. I know you love your musicals. I love my musicals. I feel very strongly about what a movie musical should be, and I feel like this missed the mark on pretty basic levels. I actually have no problem with their singing and dancing. It's you kind of accept these days that the era of the triple threat is long behind us. So when you watch old movies and actors were just expected to be good singers, good dancers, and good actors at the same time because of the where they came from and because of the movies at that time. That doesn't exist anymore. So they're not great singers and dancers, but I actually you're totally right. It's them doing it and they show us they do the choreography and we see them doing it. So they've definitely put in the work. And I kind of like character singing over like highly um like quality singing. I think it's endearing. But my
Yeah,
issue is
that's a really
this
good
is
word for it.
first of all, I didn't think it was shot like a stage musical. I think it was shot by someone who shot it like a movie without shooting it like a musical should be shot. And the second thing, the main thing for me is that all the songs were, save for the first one and the last one. I want to talk about the last one in a bit more detail in a second. I thought all the songs were really weak and forgettable and overproduced, and I just was so desperate for them to be singing live on a live capture because it was so. The problem with movie musicals is that it turns into music videos when you don't have live performance, and unless you have someone who knows who has their toes in both worlds. Like the best movie musical of the 21st century is High School Musical 3. That is the high bar. That is the high bar because the choreographer and the director both came from theater and then moved into movie making, and so it captures what a musical should be. This did not. There were a number of shots during the numbers that were really disjointed. But the main thing actually that really annoyed me about the song is that 4 times in this movie, it might be more, someone starts singing a song and someone interrupts it and the song just ends. And it made me furious by the when it happened the fourth time because it's so jarring for me because I love the songs and the songs are an important part of like music. It can express emotions more than words can, so it's an important storytelling tool. And to have someone go, no, stop, like I hated it. And yeah, it's
I
done.
don't
It's
remember
there's
that.
a
I don't remember that
four
happening. I
times,
do.
4 times.
I I do remember a couple of times. There's one time because there's one song that was cut that then plays over the end credits.
Yes, four
Um,
times.
but I do remember like yeah, there's like the Marley character at some point like is very much like, are you gonna start singing again? But they still keep singing. Like I
No,
don't remember the songs stopping. I remember them being like
yeah,
someone being like, "Are we doing this?" And then someone being like, "Yeah, we're doing this," and then they keep going.
it
So
drove me crazy. And yeah, you're one of those they repeat as the joke at the end. And honestly, out of the, it's a shame to me because they do a reprise at the end, and that is shot. And the big group choreo is always very good and high energy and high quality. But often it wasn't shot like like a stage musical should be, so you could actually see it. The last the reprise was basically a tracking camera pulling back through different sets with everyone like dancing and singing directly through the fourth wall. So no like offset cameras, directly to us. And it was the most musical style of the whole movie. And I actually loved that final song as well. I thought it was really well done. The reprise song,
Yeah,
not the let's do some good song, but the very,
no,
very
yeah,
last like the credits
yeah.
song.
That's the first song that they reprise. It's the that Christmas morning feeling. The one that's been stuck in my head for days is that
Oh,
song. That's the first song they sing. It's the big opening number as well. And I will say
okay.
you're right. Like I do think it's impressive that they definitely like it's the same. It's along the same lines as what I talk about when we talk about fight scenes actually, and that like it's actually very clear that opening number is actually a really good example of this. That they did all the work, did all the choreo, rehearsed the shit out of it, and had like a million people on a big stage dancing, and then they do cut around way too much. it does
Yeah, totally.
it does cut around way too much to the point where it's
It
not
really
quite
does.
to the point of like a really bad fight scene, but it does cut way too much.
And
Uh,
again, it has that the same effect of it does in fights, is that it loses anything you've built up to that moment, and it's not how you should shoot a musical. It's just not.
yeah, I mean,
So, bleh.
I'm sort of okay with like in terms of like an aspect change. I think that's sort of fine. There's a couple really sort of good aspect changes where the camera moves position and then tracks in that opening number. It moves back to a different position and then tracks over the crowd and up to like a balcony. And I thought
Yeah,
that was really, and then tracks
yeah, yeah,
along a bunch of
yeah,
people
yeah.
tap dancing. So it's not all bad, but it definitely like
No,
at some
it's nothing
points it
bad.
at some points it's just like it does do a couple of quick cuts and you're like, why did you do that? That
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense.
I guess.
And I don't like I I hate to say it, but I find the Good Afternoon song really catchy, and I
Oh,
kind of
so my
expect. I was gonna say I warned you that if you watch this, there'll be at least one song that your kids are going to be singing to you for days, and that was the one I meant.
right.
So I assume that they
So
are now singing that song to you all the time.
no, they're not. But my son, when I put him to bed, said, I put him down. I love you. Good night. He said, Dad. I said, yeah. He said, good afternoon. And anyone was watching football, and someone scored a goal, and he said, "Wow, that was really good afternoon and good." And Rachel's like, my wife is like, "No, no, don't you can't. That's probably swearing. Stop it!" Like she, so they've definitely taken on board. And both my kids, when I asked them, I did a quick poll this morning. They really enjoyed the film. So, but just shows that they can't be trusted. So, what do
I
they
mean,
know?
honestly,
But
that's sort of it too, though. Like, I don't like. I've seen a lot of people complain about this movie being like not very deep and very like forgettable. But my experience with it has been like, honestly, is that
what were
really
they
what you were
expecting?
looking for from like a? And
Man,
even the film even calls itself out as another adaptation of A Christmas Carol that nobody asked
yeah.
for. Like
Yeah.
this movie is trying to do exactly one thing, and that is for approximately 2 hours put a smile on your face, and it succeeded in
Mhm.
doing that with me. And that
So,
is fine. We are allowed to have movies at that
uh,
tier of filmmaking. Not everything needs
oh my
a
god,
super deep message.
I do love deep Christmas movies like The Holiday, like really deep narrative victories. Those movies. I mean, what do they expect? There are what I found frustrating, and this is I freely admit something that really bugs me because I love musicals and I've done a lot of work with them on many different formats, and I just when it's wrong, I can't go look past the small things that aren't right. The annoying thing about this movie is that there's a couple of moments I've mentioned the last song, but they that are incredibly effective and good. There's one moment where Ryan Reynolds is talking about something they've already seen, and Will Ferrell, because he's got like the admin crew, he gets on his radio. It's like, yes, can you call up memory 22138, please? And she's like, yeah, memory 2138, and they literally wheel in the set from off screen, like it's a
Yeah,
stage show, and the stagehands wheel in the back, and when they walk forward, they are then in the full location. I thought that was amazing. I was there
yeah.
thinking, why didn't you do that for the whole movie? Like that is such a good idea to have it as multiple stage pieces, and then you get the stagey aspect, you get the musical aspect. But
I
that
mean, it
was
does do
incredible.
that though. They
Great
do that.
idea.
They do that a whole bunch of times. Anytime they're in a
No,
memory, they do that. Like this, if
no.
you, anytime they're in a, every time they're in a memory, there's stagehands, and there's one time where
Yeah, but it's not
they're
overt
in,
like that.
like, there's one time where they're in somebody else's memory where there aren't stagehands, and that's because the stagehands don't know where they are, like very, like obviously in the narrative. But
Really?
every time that they're in one of Ryan Reynolds' memories, there's stagehands all over the place. They're doing that shtick the whole time, so that doesn't bother me.
I really enjoyed it.
I chose to enjoy it when it happened, not lament when it didn't.
I really enjoyed. There's one moment where the Ghost of Christmas Future comes in. It's like Death in a Cloak, voiced by Tracy Morgan, but at that point, he hasn't heard his voice. And Ryan Reynolds is like, no, and just like leaps through a painting and just sprints away, and all the other like side ghosts have to catch up with him, and like everyone's huffing and puffing,
Yeah.
and that felt good as well. So I kind of wish there'd be more of that. But especially my main criticism is the songs were weak as hell, like overproduced and really weak. And that really, as a musical, it lives and dies by the songs. The lyrics were not good on the songs. They were so like nothing moved me at all. How many stars are you
Well,
giving this film?
you do have a heart made of stone, so that makes sense.
I do. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Um,
come from the land of Miss Thatcher, so yeah, your heart made of stone.
that's Mrs. Thatcher, the Iron Lady. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, yeah, an iron lady with a heart made of stone. That's good.
No, I'm the
Awesome.
other way. I'm the other way. I'm so oversensitive and completely defined by musical chord changes. It's ridiculous that when music doesn't do anything to me, I'm like, oh, it's bad music. Everything is ruined. So, how many stars for you?
It's 3. It's perfectly cromulent 3 stars.
It's 2 from me, but your kids are gonna love it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, take my opinion and throw it away as needed because you should watch it. It's not a bad film. It's perfectly fine, but it wasn't. It didn't tick the boxes I needed it to.
I mean, I will say also that like this is not going to help if you're one of the people who's sort of over Ryan Reynolds. But I thought that Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell had a really fun chemistry together. I thought that
Yeah,
they were,
yeah.
you know, they were clearly. Here's the thing, and I think that last shot you're talking about, that last musical number, really lays bare is that I think it really does feel like everyone had a great time making this movie, and that goes a long way for me.
Yeah, I like
So
Sunita Mani as well. She was good.
yeah, I kind of wish she got to sing more and dance more
Yeah,
prominently because she's actually a very talented dancer. But
yeah.
yeah, she is pretty great. I've enjoyed her every time I've seen her in anything.
Maybe I was just annoyed that they dangled Rose Byrne in front of my nose for like precisely 2 minutes, and then we didn't see her again.
That wasn't even the best
That's
cameo, though. The best cameo was the Judi Dench cameo.
the
Where
what?
Judi Dench cameos in the movie. Did you miss
Oh
that
yes.
part?
Oh
She just
no.
walks through the
I didn't hear
frame.
what you said.
It's so good.
And she's part of the song as well, isn't she?
Yeah, yeah,
it's very good.
very good.
Okay.
Anyway,
So
let's move
fine.
on. Let's move on to our last thing because we're running short on time here. We're going to talk now about another holiday special, and that is the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, which is a 45-minute TV special in the vein of the Star Wars Holiday Special, in which the Guardians, who realize that Peter Quill is sad about Christmas, go to Earth and bring Christmas back to Knowhere for him. And it's kind of sweet and lovely, and also a little forgettable, but sweet and lovely. And I got to hear Kevin Bacon sing a country Christmas song, and I'm fine with it. What did you think, Simon?
What's the premise? Give us the rundown. Oh, you just did give us.
That's pretty much. I just did. Like they've the two main, like, if you're over concerned with Marvel lore, there's two main things that come out of this. The first of which is that the Guardians now own Knowhere, which was the base of the Collector in the movies, and Peter is sad because on Earth it's almost Christmas, and his memories of Christmas are not good. So Drax and Mantis decide to go to Earth and get Peter a present, and the present they want to get for him is legendary Earth hero Kevin Bacon. And that's pretty much the whole story. They go to Earth and they interact with people on Earth, and yeah, they kidnap Kevin Bacon and bring him back to Nowhere, and he sings a song, and it's just kind of
Yeah,
lovely.
it's. I think it's the tone of it. You're right. It is forgettable. It's extremely saccharine, and that's exactly what it. I feel like that's the tone it needed to be. Like it
I
does
It's
it does
exactly what
openly
it's supposed
echo
to
the
be.
Star Wars Holiday Special. Yeah, it
Yeah.
opens with the same animation style as the Star Wars Holiday Special. Like it clearly it wears its heart on its sleeve, and its influences laid bare, and it's the way it's shot as well. If it's shot more like a TV episode, it doesn't feel like movie. Do you know what I mean? Like not
No,
quality,
it
but it's
has
shot like a TV episode.
it has big it has big we made this while we were making other things energy.
Yeah,
If
definitely.
you know what I
Yes.
mean? Like it very much feels like, well, all these people are in the same place. You think we can get Kevin Bacon to come down for a day or two? Yeah, sure. Okay, let's buy a bunch of Christmas lights and make a special. And to
So
be
my kids,
clear,
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that.
no,
It's a perfectly good way to make an overly sweet Christmas story. And there's one
and,
major revelation that I won't like. I mean, that
mhm.
comes out in the story like immediately, but I'm not going to spoil it here. That becomes kind of like the maybe the point about Christmas at the end, and I liked it. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I thought
Yeah,
it was
and
totally fine.
it was. I mean, there's whenever you see a bunch of actors make jokes about actors, you know what kind of show. Like, there's a running joke towards the end about how terrible actors are, and they're all like, "Yes, actors are terrible," and Karen Gillan's like, "Yes, actors are shitheads."
Yeah,
But and so it's that level. Like you always know what kind of thing you're getting when actors actually start criticizing actors. Ha 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 ha. But for me, two things. First one, my kids didn't know who Kevin Bacon is, which is something I have to rectify.
yeah. That's
So
your fault.
that's my fault. That's my fault. I'll start with Tremors and go to Footloose and things like that. But the nice thing is that with the World Cup on, I'm streaming it by streaming UK TV, and turns out Kevin Bacon has done a bunch of cell phone commercials for UK TV. So every like 20 minutes or so, I'm in the other side of the house and I hear, "Dad, it's Kevin Bacon!" like pretty regularly. So now they're very excited about Kevin Bacon because they
As
really
well, they
loved
should
this.
be. Kevin Bacon is a
They
great
really loved
actor.
it, yeah. And they the show does the show that the thing does a really good job of telling you why he's important, and even though you've never heard of him before, and again, that's the James Gunn's writing is very very good at that, I think. But the standout for me, I have to say, is that the character of Mantis has always really annoyed me. It's always felt really one note, and she's very much a side character. And the MVP in this is Pom Klementieff as
Hmm.
Mantis, who is suddenly like her own character with her own like feelings. And there's wonderful moments where she snaps that I just loved. And she was the best part of this for me. She's a great actress anyway, and I've always thought Mantis is not her obviously giving her enough to do, but that changed with this episode because I thought she was wonderful and so funny and really great timing. And your feelings, I think Drax is a bit overplayed now, but he was fine in this as well. Like his the literal kind of approach to his character is a bit overplayed, but my kids loved. There's one part where he gets tickled, and my kids absolutely love that part. And it won't. It's not what it sounds like, but when you watch it, you'll understand. So
I
it
did
was. It's
also, yeah. I mean, yeah. I sort of get what you're saying. I think that Drax is fine in one of the movies you think he's bad in, but yeah, he's definitely it's wearing a little thin. But I also like that
yeah.
they go to Earth and they walk through LA, through Hollywood, and they walk past a bunch of like people in the people in cosplay on streets who you take photos with for money, and everyone thinks that he's God of War, which I think was really
Yes.
funny.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, we got a picture. We got a walk. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
nice.
So yeah, I mean, again, sort of sweet, sort of overly sweet and saccharine, but also like that's exactly what this kind of Christmas thing should be.
Yeah.
Like Christmas stories. I mean, sure, you can layer a ton of meaning into a Christmas story, but a lot of the time, this kind of thing, all it needs to do is be like, hey, isn't it great if we love each other?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that can be the whole story, and that's all I really care about. And that's exactly what this one sort of gave me.
Yeah, totally. If it
Two friends doing a nice thing for their friend, and then singing a song, and then that's like the whole thing. And I'm totally on board with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very funny as well. And Kevin Bacon's obviously he's great, but he's great in this. He's on board. Like sometimes when you have cameos like this, the style is a bit they don't quite get it. Do you know what I mean? They don't quite get it. And there's
It becomes
moments
a
in
bit
this where,
pantomime-y.
yeah, exactly. And he's very, very good at this. Mantis kind of puts him into a trance, so he does change like character states sometimes very quickly right in front of the camera, and he gets it absolutely right. I thought he's really, really good in this, and was really the heart of it. And the whole thing was kind of dependent on him being that heart, and he's just great. He's just a great actor, and he really gets the style here.
Yeah,
which was really nice.
I also really enjoy that. That's like a lot of minor details, like how Groot has grown up into like a big chunky, teenager, rather than the sort of like more lithe and sophisticated version he was in the first Guardians movie. And I really like that we got a full blown Cosmo the Space Dog, because weird Marvel is weird, and I love it for that. So it's a sweet thing, and it's definitely worth the 45 minutes of your time that it'll take up.
Totally, and it should be saccharine and sort of goofy and forgettable. That's exactly the tone it should have been. I think if it had tried to do anything more than that, it wouldn't be a Christmas holiday special. Right? So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, agreed. So how many stars will you give the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special?
It's a 3 stars.
Yeah, it's a perfect. Again, I really enjoyed it. As with the last film, it's a perfectly cromulent 3 stars.
It's better. It's better than the last film. If you want to watch something Christmassy,
I would say that it is shorter, but better. Because I will say one thing about Spirited is at 2 hours, it is a little on the long side. But yeah.
Oh, now I didn't talk about Spirited. I feel exactly the same way. It was too long, and I didn't like the split protagonist. I really didn't like it really messed with the whole Christmas Carol structure. But anyway, I don't want to talk about that. You're right, it is too long, and this was perfectly formed at 45 minutes. I'd like every movie to be 45 minutes going forward, please. That would be nice. Like more movies at 45 minutes would be great.
Yeah. True. All right. Well, let's cut it there because I am out of time.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for listening. All of those things we've talked about are just available now. So go watch them. Mm-hmm. Let us know what you thought. We're on the social medias, most prominently on the Twitters. You can reach us at AwesomeFridayCA. You can reach Simon at Temporary Pen. You can reach me at SmatthewAF. And I'm on Hive now at Smatthew. So if you're doing that thing, do it there. We'd like to thank everyone who's listening. We have a number of new listeners again this week. So thank you so much for joining us. If you've been here the whole time, thank you so much for staying. We love each and every one of you. If you have liked what you've heard, you know the drill. Smash that like button. 5-star reviews. Tell your friends. Be sure to visit the website as well for more of our content and our ratings and streaming links to all of these things.
And we have a Patreon and a coffee, and give us money if you can. Thank you.
Yeah, that was the subtle version of what I was going to say. We, of course, film. We record this here in Vancouver on the unceded lands of the Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish nations. That is our show for this week. Thank you so much for listening and for joining us on this awesome Friday.
We love you. Bye.